In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Peace and blessings, mob community. Man, we back again for another brainstorming session. As you guys know, if you're new, our community is based around entrepreneurship. We're always looking for different ways to motivate, inspire, and educate always. And if you've been around for a minute, welcome back to another brainstorming session. We always love to, give back to our community, whether it's knowledge, whether it's resources, whether it's tools. Speaking of resources, make sure you guys check out some of our new updates on our website. We got a bunch of goodies, a bunch of updates for you guys, a bunch of resources for you guys. I'm just so excited, for you guys to just get your hands on some of these resources. If you have a fellow entrepreneur out there that need some extra hands, make sure you guys tap them in with the mod, man. Make sure you let them know that there's a community out there ready to support them, whether it's bringing essential skills, helping them launch or scale their business, or just connecting with some good people. That's what it's all about, man. Throughout my journey in this industry as an entrepreneur, relationships is everything. And speaking of that, I definitely want to give a big shout out to all of our members, all of our mentors, all of our advisors. We've had an amazing year, man. 2025 has just been immaculate. Me personally, I'm already in 2026, but hey, that's an entrepreneur in me. But yeah, if you have a fellow entrepreneur, if you need any one of our resources as far as business funding, business plans and strategy, if you want to get into AI automation, if you need help with advertising and marketing, social media management, or if you need help with your branding, you got to keep your logos on everything branded out. Or if you just need a reliable video, audio production team, reliable photographers, or if you just need your website revamped, or you just need a brand new website, we have all of those tools ready for you, for the most part. So shout out to everybody who's actually been trusting us, putting their brand in our hands. That means a lot to us. We know when you're an entrepreneur, your company is your baby. So we want to make sure that we take that serious. At the end of the day, all of our mentors is like family to us. So it's just amazing to be a part of all of these amazing journeys. I want to shout out some of our members specifically, like Philosophy LLC. They've been doing wonders this year. We've been accomplishing a lot of things. And they're based out of Georgia. Also want to shout out Jasmine and Serenity from Serenity Nail Polish, based out of New York. Again, shout out to all of our other members who's really just been sticking in there. I know, at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is not for everybody. So, you gotta kind of be, a risk taker. And that's what it's all about, man. Taking risks, chances make champions. So, we're always, stressing, and making sure that, we're being your accountability partner, and we're bringing you some motivation. And that's what these brainstorming sessions are about. We always want to bring you, new innovators, business owners, creators, so you can hear their side of the story. You can actually get some real life experience under your belt. You're here for some people that's actually putting their boots on the ground. We hear a lot of things on social media. It's an abundance of information, which is a blessing at the same time. But it's always good to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. And that's what that's why we host our brainstorming sessions, to make sure that you guys are you guys stay motivated to stay in there, because we know it's hard. It's a journey, but you have to learn to enjoy the journey. And yeah, man, I can't wait to really connect with a lot of you guys. I know we've been getting a lot of feedback from our brainstorming sessions. Real quick, if you're live with this right now, let me hear what was your favorite brainstorming session this year? Who was your favorite guest, and what did you get out of it? We want to make sure that you guys are taking home some value, taking home some gems. And if you haven't got a chance to check out any of our brainstorming sessions, make sure you guys again check out our website. www.masteronourbusiness.com/mobtv. That'll actually take you to our page where we have all of our content, exclusive interviews, commercials that we've done, a little bit of everything, event recaps. We got a lot. We got a lot going on. But again, man, it's just been a blessing to be a catalyst to the community and be that motivator. Again, we've been seeing your feedback. We've been seeing how we've been motivating you guys. A lot of new business owners have came out of this as well, and that's always great to motivate people to kind of keep it pushing. Again, make sure you guys check out some of our upcoming events and activities that we have coming up. 2026 is going to be crazy. I'm actually super excited for our STEAM programs and our STEAM workshops to kind of kick off, so we can have something for the youth as well. But it's going to be for all ages. We're going to be focusing on, of course, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, because I think it's something that we need, in our community. It's how we run our community, as well as entrepreneurship. Of course, we need our business owners. Our main goal is to create more jobs in the future. And how we gonna do that if we're not on our business? So we have to master it. We have to stay on top of our goals, and make sure that we have the right people on our team to actually accomplish those goals. I don't want to keep you guys waiting too much longer. I actually have another special guest for you guys, and I can't wait to kind of get into this. Queen, are you unmuted? And unmute yourself. Tell the people that's under a rock who you are, what it is that you do, and then we're gonna get right into it.
All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Janelle Boyd, and I am co-owner and winemaker for Boyd Cru Wines. We're the first Black family-owned winery in the state of Maryland. And me and my husband, we got our start back in 2020 is when we, kind of loosely, I always like to say we kind of loosely got started in the midst of the pandemic. We started making wine in our kitchen, not advisable, but we really took that as an opportunity to delve into, the wine scene and the wine industry, because we've always had a passion and love for wine, and how it really connects people. But we also noticed there was a lack of diversity in the wine industry. We didn't always see a lot of people who looked like us when we would travel around to different wineries, different vineyards. And so that got us to thinking, well, why is that? And so as we did even more research, we realized, what, we have an opportunity to as my grandmother would say, if you see a problem, then that means you own the solution. So we had an opportunity to provide a solution to that and take a different approach to entering the wine industry and building our winery. And so we launched in 2022 is when we actually released our first vintage. And it's been an uphill and sometimes downhill journey from there. So, but we're super, just super blessed and, community and mission minded and driven. And it truly does take a village to raise a business.
Yes, it do. Yes, it do. First of all, let me get a round of applause for you guys. I love innovators. Throughout the pandemic, it was a lot of ups and downs. It was really, I like to call it a blessing in disguise, because I know so many, people that really, so many businesses that was born that year.
Yeah.
I like to call it, it was the start of a new millennium. And it really sat people down and made people realize that we can do this on our own. We can really, and not only just survive, but we can excel. I know some people that became millionaires throughout the pandemic, and it's a beautiful thing, to really just rise above. And that's just like us. We rise above adversity, and
Right.
when it's the hardest, and when you out your comfort zone, that's why you got to get out your comfort zone sometimes, so you can really get up out that shell and really evolve into something new. I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years, so to be able to see so many businesses come out of the pandemic, and some people hung it up, some people gave up, and that really put us in a position where it showed us who was the strong ones and who was just not ready for this industry. So congratulations to you and hubby, man. You guys are doing some great things. But real quick, what really excites you about being an entrepreneur? What excites you about your business?
Well, I think what excites me the most about being an entrepreneur. So first of all, for me, this is my second entrepreneurial life. In the midst of us opening or starting our winery business, I pivoted away from my first business, which was an event planning and design business. And so, I think, to your point, really understanding entrepreneurship is a journey, right? And it is about really understanding not just the business, but it's about understanding who you are. Like it is about building your business, but honestly, it's about building yourself. And so I think through entrepreneurship, I have learned the most about myself, and I have evolved, as a person, both personally and professionally. And that's really what excites me the most, because I feel like when you are an untapped, resource, you start to learn things about yourself and how you can be fully evolved into who you're supposed to be out here in this entrepreneurial landscape, right? And that's what excites me. Like I know that I have just scratched the surface of who I really am called to be and how that's going to impact other people that are called to be connected to me, right? So I think that is the part that excites me the most, because I see how we are all interconnected, when we are in alignment with where we're supposed to be in our journey. That's the key.
I agree. I agree for sure. I can definitely say the same for myself. I'm definitely not the same person I was 17 years ago when I first started. Just a lot of the things that I didn't know that I was forced to learn, being an entrepreneur, and also learning about my community, as well. It taught me a lot about, people and, the people that was around me, who was going to be supporting, who was not going to be supporting. And, I think a lot of people talk about support a lot, but it also taught me how to allow people to support me,
Mm,
how to ask for that support. Because
yeah.
sometimes people, you might be like, oh man, they not supporting me, but sometimes people just don't know how, and you have to
Right.
really understand how you need to be supported.
Right.
Say for instance, I was into event planning. We had our own venue in Georgia, the Low Loft. We did a lot of great events there, and that really showed me, how to really uh, determine how I needed support. And some people, they might come to the party for free, and they might be like, "Well, I came and I supported, but you didn't support any vendors. You didn't spend no money with the car. You didn't even pay to get in here. So it's really you just took up space." However, it might be somebody who may have, experience a huge influence, where that could be support from them just showing up, because
Right. Right.
just them showing up may have brought 10, 20 people that did spend money or did, support the vendors or support the bar, support the house. So
Right.
during that time, it really taught me how to determine, okay, I need you to pay. If you really
Right.
want to support, you got to pay for a ticket, or you can just come. I just need you to show up.
Right. And I think that gets at a larger question or a larger issue, which is communication. Like how are you communicating to people what you need, right? How
Yeah,
are you communicating to them how you desire for them to show up for you? Just like the expectation of how you should expect that people are going to communicate to you how they need you to show up for them.
yeah,
And I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we get in our head that it's us against the world. And I'm
yeah,
like, no, it's not you against the world. It's
yeah,
you working with the world. And it's incumbent upon us, though, to dictate what, not dictate, but lay out the expectation of what that looks like, so that people can plug in where we need them to plug in. Because 9 times out of 10, people do want to support. I
yeah,
honestly have not met that many people who are like, oh no, I don't want to support what you're doing. When
yeah,
they see you're doing something, they do want to support. People like to be a part of things
yeah,
that have impact, right? And so I don't subscribe to people don't want to show up and support me in my business. I've never subscribed to that. I subscribe to how do I make sure that people know what I need in order to show up and support my business.
Yes, and I had to learn that, the hard way. I used to, get in my feelings like, oh, they didn't share my flyer, they didn't share the flyer, and then, once I got to the point where I actually had my own motion going on, and it would get to the point where, because like you said, I love to support people, but it was times where I couldn't support somebody because I simply I didn't probably see the flyer.
Right.
So somebody might think the same thing about me, like, dang, you ain't even share my flyer. And in my head, like, dang, if I would have seen it, I definitely would have shared it. I definitely would have shown it, but I just didn't see it, or I was too busy to see it. And once I started to, go through my own and really just, get some motion on my own, I had to really, look at myself like, look, I can't get in my feelings no more, because I see how it really is. Reality hits you. The algorithm, is different for everybody.
Yeah. And the reality is that we're all living our life, right? Like in real time. We're all moving through life in real time, and we got a million things vying for our time, our effort, our action, our energy. And so I don't hold it against anybody. I remember one of my teachers, back in like grade school, used to say, she always used to say to us as kids, like, assume the best intentions, assume the best intentions. And as crazy as that sounded as a child, as I became an adult, I'm like, okay, that's what she's talking about. Like, assume the best intentions, right? So if you don't see somebody doing something, or, like, don't default to, they just don't want to support me. Like, be like, hey, did you see us? Did you see that flyer I put out? Like, could you just share that for me real quick? You know what I'm saying? And then that going and kick all that to the curb, because it's like, okay, I communicated. They know exactly what I need them to do, right?
And when I started doing that, I seen a full 360. We started to get more support. And I'm like, dang, all I had to do was ask. all I had to do was just ask them to support me, because life be lifing, man.
Right. That part.
Own situation going on. And I think that was the best thing, about the pandemic. Everybody had to sit down, and we, everybody was able to communicate. We was able to connect with people that we was already connected with for years, but at that point we was able to connect on a whole new level. I learned things about people that I was around for 10 years and I worked with for 10 years plus, and I learned new things about them just by communicating, effortlessly. So, that's a big one. But real quick, if you could instantly remove one major obstacle in your business, what would it be?
You know what? I don't know if this is that. I don't know. I don't know if this is a legit answer, but I wouldn't remove anything. I would not remove a single solitary thing, because every single obstacle that I've had to go through has actually made me better. Like, it actually has taught me something. I may not have enjoyed it. There have been times where, capital, for instance, I'm like, oh my goodness, how in the world are we going to, like, when we were at the beginning of our business, the wine industry, it is capital intensive. Literally, you are spending money before you ever make a dollar. Like, you have to harvest the grapes, you have to get the barrels, the equipment, you have to purchase the labels, you have to purchase the bottles, you have to purchase the corks. You are doing all of these things, doing all of this purchasing before you ever see a dime, a return on your investment. So the capital has to be there. Like, the phrase, scared money don't make no money. Like, that's a thing. So so we, I would have times where I'm like, where is this money coming from? Because the math is not mathing. But through all of that, it would come. It would come. And, I had to learn sometimes the hard way. Like, that's not that maybe wasn't the best decision, or maybe we could have handled that differently, or maybe there was another avenue that we could have explored. But through all of those scenarios, all of those lessons, they were blessings. because I learned how to move differently. I learned what I needed to do better. And I learned that, you know what? Failure is okay. Like it's not the end of anything. And most honestly, it's most times it's the beginning of doing something even better.
Definitely, I definitely agree. Chances make champions. I always tell people all the time, especially our members, you have to enjoy the process.
Mhm.
All the way through. The good with the bad. You have to enjoy. You have to really learn to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You have to learn to enjoy failing.
Yeah.
Like my boy Gary V say all the time. You have to really enjoy. You got to look forward to failing.
You do. And you have to not be so ready to so in trying to protect yourself from it, right? Like sometimes I think we tiptoe through business trying to avoid failure, like trying to protect ourselves from it. Like, oh, I don't want to, I'm not going to do that because I don't want this to happen, or I'm not going to take that chance because I don't want this to happen. But you can't do that. You can't do that. Like there's no reward in that, right? And oftentimes that also inhibits us from growing and scaling our business because we're not really out here taking those leaps of faith because we're trying to avoid what if I fall? But what if you don't, right? So inevitably you just got to take the leap.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's why I keep referring back to the pandemic because it forced us to, it forced a lot of us to take that leap. Because a lot of us, hey, if you get laid off of your job, I know a lot of people that get laid off on their careers,
Right. Right.
and they didn't have no choice but to take that leap, and it was like, oh, they landed softly and they succeeded, and it was like, dang, I could have been doing this the whole time. So sometimes we're forced to. But yeah, chances to make champions. A chances to make champions merch coming soon for sure. we gotta have that for sure. But real quick, 5 years from now, how would you define success for your business, and what do you feel is the biggest barrier standing in the way right now? I know you're learning off, and I've learned a lot, bumping my head throughout the times. But where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So let me tackle the first part. You said, so what do we define? Repeat the first part for me. Sorry.
So 5 years from now, how would you define success for your business?
Yeah. So I love that part of the question because again, being that this is my second time as an entrepreneur in business, I've had to learn how to define success for myself. Period. Sometimes you can get caught up in living out what you think is supposed to be success in your business, only to feel void in yourself. Like you thought that you wanted X, but once you got X, you're like, okay, how come I'm not happy? How come I'm not, out here rejoicing? How come I'm not, celebrating? Because that wasn't your depiction of success. That was somebody else's. And so I've had to learn first, what does success look like for me? For me, it is very, very different from other people. Like I have a family. Success for me is my family good? Like, am I able to serve my family while serving this business? Am I able to come home and fix a meal for my boys? Am I able to be here when they get out of school and hear about their day? Am I able to go on a date night with my husband when we want to, go on a date night? Because sometimes those are things, especially for women entrepreneurs, I will say that those are things that get lost in the shuffle. And society has told us that we are not able to have both. We can't be a and both. It has to be a or. And I have learned that no, that's not the case. But it is up to me to figure out what does that look like. So then as I'm building, I know what I'm building towards. So success for me in the next 5 years looks like continuing to grow this business. We are looking at expanding beyond our current tasting room, and also expanding our into another location because we want to be able to be better equipped to provide different services to our community. Like right now, we do a lot of community minded programs around bringing other entrepreneurs, other small businesses into our tasting room and highlighting and amplifying them. But we want to be able to do more of that. We want to also provide programs that really equip entrepreneurs to build a sustainable family business like what we just like what we are doing, but that also looks like making sure that I still have time for my family. So it also means putting the right people in place so that I am not that person in every place. And so that's what, in 5 years, that's what that looks like to me. And then also us starting our own fund where we can now invest, because that's one of the ways that we got started. We started a community campaign, community investment campaign, where our community was able to invest in our business, so that they can see something growing that is right there in their backyard. And so we then want to turn around and pay that forward and do that for other businesses as well.
I love it. I love it. I think community is the most important thing, especially when you're a business owner. So I love that you speak about community a lot, and that's what we're all about. Nothing without the community. I always say you can't ask people to support what you got going on, and you're not doing anything for the community. It's asinine. So I'm big on that. But real quick, have you seen something smart a competitor is doing that you would love to adapt with your business?
Um, Gosh, that's a great question. So I do think the wine industry as a whole um has a lot of opportunity, untapped opportunity in the tech space. Particularly with the continued development of AI, and also, just how it is going to make things more intuitive, how it can also make certain positions and certain parts of the business less rigorous. And so I do think that there's a lot of opportunity there to bring technology into certain parts of the wine industry that we just haven't even scratched the surface yet. But I'm excited to see how that can further evolve the business overall. We've even had conversations about developing an app, which is very much in the premature stages. But those are things that I think a very traditional industry like the wine industry could really benefit from.
Definitely got to bring us in on that. We got some great stack developers that can definitely help you with the app, and especially with AI as well.
Yeah.
It's I've been stressing so much. If you're a business and you're not incorporating AI in your business, soon you're going to be left behind. This is the next big thing since the internet. And I've talked to a lot of a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of creators that's scared of it. But we have to get ahead of it. We have to understand it. We have to, even if we don't understand it or have the time, we have to put people on our team that understands it, and figure out
Mhm.
different ways. And I like to ask people this all the time. If what is the perfect AI tool look for you? What function would your perfect AI tool do
Yeah.
or help you?
I think for us, it would in some fashion or some form connect back to how people experience wines, like how they kind of how they identify their palate, right? So there's a lot of conversation in the wine world around what you should taste, what you should smell, and sometimes I do think it has been overdone a bit to the point, and that's one of the things that to be honest, we did differently, is that we wanted to make wine approachable. So we don't tell people what they should be tasting. We help them discover that, right? But I think there is some opportunity around AI kind of creating these personas of what those tasting profiles or what somebody's palate, might enjoy, and then taking that and creating a persona of, if you typically enjoy these type of things, then these might be the places where you want to lean in, right? So if you go to a restaurant or if you're going to a friend's house for dinner, then now you've got, maybe a little guidance on, hey, I remember, the last time I tasted this, it really helped me enjoy this. And so maybe I should bring this type of bottle over to my friend's house, or maybe when we go to this restaurant, we should have this type of bottle, So I think there is a way to um, help, consumers understand their palates a little bit better, but with some true research and not just a made up concept of this is what you should be tasting, right? Because I feel like that is where some of the pretentiousness has come from, and why some demographics have felt like, what, this just isn't really my jam.
I love it. I love it. That's genius, actually. I love that. I love it.
Thank you.
I think you hit it right on the head. So, real quick, I want to touch on branding. This is one of our modules. One of our 12 modules that we really, we're really heavy on with our members. What's the most common branding mistake you see entrepreneurs make, and what's the better approach?
I think that, with brands, it sometimes it can get so personal, right? And I think that's where some of the error or some of the, mistakes might come in, is when we allow the branding to be a little bit too personal, as opposed to, well, who is the target audience that you are speaking to, right? It may not be that target audience is you, like that. It might be a very different target audience that you're trying to speak to through your branding, but yet, because as small businesses and entrepreneurs, our business is so personal to us, it clouds things for us sometimes. And so I am, that is one of the reasons why I literally have what I call a board of directors. And those are people who I know I can tap into, who are in different spheres. They're not necessarily wine people. They can bring a different lens and perspective to what I'm doing, but I know that they are credible and that they will give me a honest feedback. And, tapping into those people allows me to take the personal part out of it, because I know that they're going to give me an unbiased feedback, unbiased answer as it relates to our branding, or any questions that I have before we decide to, kind of pull the trigger on something.
I definitely agree. I talk about this all the time. I was just talking to one of our members based out of Detroit about this all the time, and I'm actually from Detroit myself. So I use an analogy, as far as Motown. I think that's what made Motown. Well, I know that's what made Motown so great, because, it wasn't just one person in one ear. Barry Gordy put a bunch of different professionals in one room, and if everybody didn't raise their hand and say this song was a hit, they wouldn't put it out. Everybody in the room had to raise their hand, and I think that's what really set the bar and the standard, and why there was so many hits coming out of Hitsville.
Right.
So I think we all need to adapt that same thing, because like you said, we can get so personal and wrapped up in what we like, but the consumer might think something totally different. And I battle with a lot of small businesses that I consult, when I ask them who is their target audience. And that's something that we help them with, because most people is like, everybody. I want to sell to everybody. But
right. It's like, no.
That's, first of all, you may not have enough capital to really reach everybody. So
right.
That's a bigger headache that you're putting on yourself. But at the same time, realistically, everybody's just not into what you're selling.
Right.
So we want to really just bypass all of that and really tap into the people that's interested. I think that's super
Right.
important.
And don't be afraid to ask for feedback. Like
Yes.
I mean, one of the things that we are really big on is that we just ask people like, give us feedback. What did you think about that? How did we do with that? Like, and we tell them, like, you're not going to hurt our feelings. We want to know because this is how we get better. This is how we do what we do, but do it better. We're not aiming to be perfect. I always tell my team, we're not aiming to be perfect. I don't expect perfection, but I do expect excellence, and excellence is different from perfection because excellence is done with an intention, right? So if we can do things with intention, then it'll translate to our customers. They're not looking for perfection either, but they understand the intention behind what you're doing.
Message for sure. I love it. I love it. That leads me to the marketing aspect. We do a lot of marketing for our members, and a lot of clients that we work with. With all of it, with just so much noise online, AI, social media, the internet in general. What's one marketing tactic you feel is still underrated but works?
Definitely hands down 1,000% building your own email list. Like that is your golden pot. If you aren't literally diligently just building your email list, then you are missing out literally on a pot of gold because that's where you can capture and really talk to your audience without all this noise. When we send out a email, a newsletter to our email list, like we're getting FaceTime with them, attention with them, time with them, uninterrupted, because yes, it might just be a small window of time, like they might just spend 3 minutes or less on that email, but it is uninterrupted time. And when they're online, they're scrolling, they're looking at multiple things. They might want to click on something, but then something comes and interrupts them, and then they off to the next thing and they forget to come back to that email captures more time. And then if you have something embedded in there that you're like, click this, and they're gonna go down the rabbit hole with you a little bit more there than if you are just relying on social media. Social media is so noisy. You have no control over it. You do not own it. So that is something that can go away just like that. And then the question becomes, how am I going to connect now with my customers, with my audience?
Y'all heard it from her. I know y'all hear it from me. I know it's a member out there right now that's watching. Like, man, he always telling me this. He always telling me I got to get on my email. Step it up, step it up, step it up. And this is what I love about these brainstorming sessions because confirmation is so important. Sometimes it's not about hearing it just from me. Sometimes we got to hear it from somebody else that's in the same boat, or even we get so many confirmations, and it don't matter what industry. We get so many different people from different industries, but it all revolves back to the same thing. And I love it. We definitely gotta, sometimes we gotta take it back to the basics.
Yeah.
We not, sometimes you're just not gonna be a Instagram star. And like you said, one of the biggest things, that I like to stress that you brought up, you don't own it. You
Right.
don't own it. That's why I'm big on owning your own digital real estate. I'm big on having your own website and actually utilizing it, bringing that data. I'm big on collecting data, sending out surveys, collecting that feedback.
That's right.
Actually, inserting the feedback. Don't, in all of our surveys that we send out is anonymous. So, I love the honest feedback that we get because it really helps us, that's why we're always updating our website, coming up with new strategies, coming up with new things that we're doing, changing new things. Because you have to evolve.
Yes.
Stay the same. And if the pandemic didn't, and I've been talking about adapting and evolving before the pandemic, but the pandemic came. That was the biggest confirmation ever because we was all forced to evolve, and I love it.
That's right.
And that's where these virtual interviews and these virtual seminars came from on our end because we was very hands on, putting on our own tours. I was publishing our magazines back then, so we was in every single state doing every event. And when all that shut down, we had to figure out a different way to connect with our audience.
That's
so
right.
important for us to adapt. I want to speak on business planning because this is another one of our modules. This is something else that I stress especially when we have new members. This is the first thing that we do is get their business plan together, make sure that they actually have a strategy and not just freestyling. How often should an entrepreneur revisit their business plan, and what's the biggest red flag when it's time to update
So I will just speak from what we do. Like we update and revisit our business plan every quarter. So quarterly works for us because it gives us an opportunity to look at what we've done for that quarter, analyze results, look at numbers, see what worked, what didn't work, what we should continue, what we should discontinue. And then as we move into the next quarter, if there's something that, was supposed to carry over from that first quarter, now we can decide, should we go ahead with that? Should we pull the plug on that? Maybe we should delay that because it's not quite where we want it to be yet. So I feel like quarterly is just right because it's not too overwhelming, because you do have other things that you're responsible for in your business and that you're also trying to manage at the same time. So it's not too overwhelming, but it does make sure that your business plan continues to be a working document. Like it can't be something that you put together and then you put it up on the shelf, never to be looked at again. Like it has to be a part of your strategy. It has to be a part of your roadmap, like where you're headed, where you've been, and you have something to now do checks and balances with versus trying to keep it all up in here, which I can tell you right now, that is not the plan. That is not the strategy. Okay. So that I say quarterly, but it's definitely needed. Like a business plan is needed. If you ever have hopes of getting funding and you want to get investments, investors, funding, loans, banks, capital, whatever, then they are going to ask you, where is your business plan? And I want you to explain it to me so that I know that you understand your business and where you're headed. And if you don't have that, then that already is going to put you behind.
They're gonna think we wrote a script for you. I'm telling you. They gonna say they told her everything to say. I say this is. I mean, you sound just like me. I say this all the time. It's super important. Have that strategy. Have that. Don't just be out here freestyling. And I think that's what really separates a hustle from an actual business. When you actually have a strategy and you're implementing it, it helps you. Sometimes every now and then you got to go back to it. There's so much going on. So yeah, I love that. I definitely agree, and I know our members is really gonna get on our head. Like, man, everything that she said, you be saying. So,
it's true though, and y'all, they didn't pay me. It's true, like it really is. True story. When we were running our community campaign, like that was hands down the number one thing that people wanted to look at. Where's your business plan? Can I look at your business plan? Will you meet with me and go over a couple of questions I have after I reviewed your business plan? And the number one thing people always came back to us and said is, you guys really know where you're headed. Like you have created the roadmap. I can literally walk through it and see it, And so for them to see the concept, because again, that was just conceptually, right? Like that was just pie in the sky. We didn't have anything in place yet. It's not like they could walk into our tasting room yet or anything. So now to go from conception to execution, and they see in real time what has come to fruition, they're like, they get it.
it's
They
big.
get it.
It's big. It's big. People want to know that that you're invested first. And it starts with planning it out, taking the time out to really, pave the way for yourself. Real quick, I wanna speak on sales and lead generation. It's something super big within the community. What's your favorite way to turn someone into a cold lead, from a cold lead into a loyal paying customer?
So my favorite way, and again, this of course is probably relevant to what type of business you have, right? But my favorite way is our product. I mean, hands down, I know that if somebody tastes our wine, we literally have a 90% or higher conversion rate. I think if you have a business that is product based, that is CPG, you have to make sure that you have invested in your product so that when somebody has an experience with your product, that your product is going to do some of that speaking for itself. It can't just be about, well, if they like me, they're going to buy from me. Yes, relationships are important. Yes, they are. That is going to come into factor, and that is going to play into their decision making. But me and my husband, we both said at the beginning of this journey, we didn't come from wine. We did not. I just said earlier, we did not know wine. We didn't come from wine. We were consumers of wine, but we knew nothing about making wine. But we made a decision early on in the very beginning of our business. We said, if we don't do nothing else, we gonna make good wine. If we don't do nothing else, we gonna make good wine. Because while, yes, I appreciate and I love that people support us because we are Black owned, I said, I don't want that to be the only reason that they support us. I said, I need that to be in addition to, not because. Okay. So when people come to us, they're like, this is good. Like, this is good for it to be 100% Maryland grown grapes in our wine, and we use no other grapes we don't use grapes from California or overseas or out of the country. Maryland grown, they're like, wow. And so that right there is the conversion. That is the sale. Everything else on top of that is just gravy.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Quality over everything for sure. So real quick, I want to dive into funding and financial growth. This is one of the big three that the big three, that I always come across. The big three challenges that I always come across is capital, access to a reliable team, and access to information. But I really want to touch on, the funding aspect. What funding opportunities do small business owners often overlook, especially in underserved communities?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it is a challenge. It is a challenge in underserved communities to get the financial capital. But like I said before, I think because we know that there are challenges, like the statistics speak for themselves around how much funding minority-owned businesses really receive, right, amongst other businesses. So since we know that, we have to be prepared coming in and make sure that all our I's are dotted and all our T's are crossed. So again, going back to knowing that you got your business plan together, knowing that you understand your margins, knowing that you understand your forecasting, like what are you projecting that your business is going to do over the next 1 to 3 years? You have to understand that, and you have to know that so that you can speak to that when people are considering funding for you, because you know that it's already a minimized pool that we are getting access to. The second thing is you got to get creative, and so when we decided to do our community investment campaign, we had not really heard a lot about crowdfunding. We didn't really know a lot about it. We knew about bank loans, we knew about angel investors. We knew that we were too young as a company at the time to probably get a bank loan because we were still within our, first year of business. And so the answer, of course, was going to be no, because we didn't have a track record yet. Angel investors, it was a no, hands down already for us, because number one, we didn't want to give up shares of our company. Like, this is a family-owned business. Part of this is the legacy that we intend to leave for our family and our community, and we don't want someone else coming in and taking a part of that, right? So it was like, okay, then we've got to think outside the box. Like, where are we going to get this from? And knowing that we are community focused and community driven, that is what propelled us to look into crowdfunding through our community. We're like, you know what? If each person, what our lowest investment was, you could invest with $100. Lowest investment, $100. Most of us spend that money at, I don't know, you name it, Starbucks, you name it, wherever, whatever commercial joint you want to say. But we knew that was a low threshold. But what that meant is that more of our community could come in and be an investor. And for the very first time, say that I invested in something that I know is going to pour back into my community. And if each person did that, then now you got, I always say, many hands make light work. Now you got many hands pulling together to create resources that ended up being $200,000. So I think we've got to learn how to think outside the box when it comes to funding, because all funding is not created equal. And we've got to realize that we are our own ecosystem of funding.
Yes, all funding is not created equal. We might have to make some merch around that. We might have profits on that one, because that is so real. That quote in itself is so powerful. And I think, it's super important for us to get creative. I think that's one of the reasons why, we created our Friends in a Mob program, because we was getting people that wanted to support, that didn't necessarily have a business, but they wanted to figure out a different way to support. So, we got creative and created that to where it's like you can still be a part of this community, whether you have a business or not, whether you want to support, other businesses or, other people, especially the youth that want to get into business. And I think that's super important. It's been doing wonders, actually. We've been doing great. So
that's awesome.
I think that's super important to get the community involved and, make sure that, they understand what they're getting involved in, and getting some value behind that. I think that's super important. Speaking of the community, we're really big on collaboration, and partnering up with, different people. But, over my years, sometimes a collaboration isn't a real collaboration. In your eyes, what makes a business partnership truly a win-win for both sides?
Yeah. So, yeah, I always talk about mutually beneficial partnerships. Like I'm big on using that language whenever approached with an opportunity to partner, because I do think that sometimes collaboration gets tossed around, kind of as a candy word, and everybody loves the thought of collaboration. But do we understand what that truly means to collaborate? Okay. And that does not mean that one person is doing the heavy lifting. That does not mean that one person is coming through the threshold with all the things. That does not mean that one person is putting all their resources on the line for the collaboration. That truly means that we are seeking a mutually beneficial way, so that both of us are pulling our resources, which usually you want to be different, so that you're bringing something to the table, you're bringing something to the table. Whatever you're bringing is usually something that I am not either well equipped to provide, or there is a benefit there for you to bring that resource, and then vice versa. And then we are both walking away being able to understand what our ROI is in this collaboration. So I always talk about alignment in my collaborations, because every collaboration is not meant to be. And I know we have good intention sometimes behind it, but unless it aligns, like unless I can really understand what is the purpose of this, then it's a no for me, and I think we have to, that this comes back to, again, I talk about how entrepreneurship really makes you put a microscope on your own characteristics and deficiencies. This is where boundaries come in. Like, if you don't have strong boundaries as a business owner, then you're going to let these partnerships and collaborations run amok and be wondering, okay, well, why does this not feel very collaborative at all? And that's why, because we've got to have boundaries when it comes to our collaborations. Outline what is it that I'm doing in this collaboration? What is it that you're bringing to the table in this collaboration? And what is the desired outcome? Those three peak components have to be a part of every strong, mutually beneficial collaboration.
Message, another one, that's another gem. This is something that I talk about a lot, and this is something I love to be clear on. Getting into any type of relationship, it has to be a give and take. And that's why we put together very detailed outlines for our members, so we can track our progress as well. Because sometimes you can have unrealistic expectations, and then sometimes you can lose track of the expectations that
What you're supposed to be doing, exactly.
So it's super important, man. Quinn, you just dropped so many jewels on the community, and I just love the fact that you took the time out to do that. One more question: if you had a bit of advice for somebody that's coming up in the entrepreneurial world, what would it be?
Oh gosh, that's gonna be hard because I'm like I could say a myriad of things. But okay, since he said it has to be one thing, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try. I think it would be to number one, give yourself grace. Like we are so hard on ourselves as entrepreneurs, and again, this probably goes back to just our own evolving in our entrepreneurial journey, but we're so hard on ourselves and we forget that this is not something that was built into us. Like we did not wake up understanding how to be an entrepreneur, right? We're just getting to a point where you're starting to see academic institutions actually have entrepreneurial coursework to help you understand how to do this, right? And even with that, there's still an application piece of this that no textbook would ever be able to teach you. But we have to extend grace to ourselves and be willing to fall and get up and fall and get up and fall and get up, because that is the journey. Like that is the journey in its truest sense. And you can't convince me otherwise. If I meet somebody who's like, I've never failed in entrepreneurship, then I'm going the other way, because I don't I don't know that to be true for myself. I've had some of my worst moments as an entrepreneur, but I've had some of my best moments as an entrepreneur, and I wouldn't change it for a thing. So just be willing to embrace all of that so that you don't end up thinking there's something wrong with you.
I love it. I love it. And that's something I really had to do for myself. We bumped our heads so many times, but you know what? I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing right now. This is not something that I even seen myself doing, consulting and working with other businesses and, having all these great relationships. So if it wasn't for me failing and bumping my head, I wouldn't be able to be a mentor to, the people that I mentor and the people that I help, and I can actually give them real life experiences from
Right.
stuff that I failed on, like business plans, websites. I didn't have none of that,
Yes.
starting off. I was just a kid, trying to make my way. And you have to bump your head, and I love that. Real quick, tell the people where they can find you, and if you can, give the mob a quick shout out.
Yes, yes. Well, you can find us at all things Boyd Cru Wines, our website, boydcruwines.com, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere is Boyd Cru. And that's Cru is CRU. Okay, so Boyd Cru, CRU Wines. And then shout out to the mob, like shout out to the mob community. I love what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest, because I believe that, again, community is what we need. We need to know that there are resources out here that help elevate us, amplify us, lift us up, inspire us, encourage us. Because if you think that you're out here to do something by yourself, then you've missed the bigger picture. And so I think that this community is definitely needed. So thank you guys so much, and continue to do what you're doing.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate you, Queen, for sure, for dropping these gems. I appreciate everybody that's tapped in with us. Until next time, definitely make sure you guys tap in with the mob community, scan the barcode, or just go to www.masteringOurbusiness.com. We're big on connecting. We're hands-on. So if you just need to ask us a question, inquire if you got any challenges or anything that you just want to overcome. If you just need some quick motivation, sometimes we just need some quick motivation from some good people. Definitely reach out. Until next time, my good people. Hey, we back again. I see you guys soon, my family, for sure.